I'm still just waiting confirmation, Phil.
Thank you, Kenny.
Okay, I believe we are now live streaming.
Thank you, Kelly. In which case, if we can move to item 1 on the agenda, which is the appointment of chair. Can I ask for nominations, please, for chair for this meeting?
Can I nominate Councillor Evans, please?
Okay. Is that seconded?
I'll have to second myself. There's only 2 of us.
Yes, I'm aware of that, Councillor Evans. So I declare you chair unopposed. Over to you, Councillor Evans.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. Item number 2 on the agenda is the evacuation procedure. Obviously, I'm not going to go through that, but could I remind all participants to make sure that mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. I'd also like to remind participants that this meeting is being streamed on the council's YouTube channel. Item number 3, to receive apologies for absence from the meeting. Councillor Wilson has informed me that he will be slightly late to the meeting, but hopefully he will be able to join the call at some point. Are there any apologies for absence from officers?
No.
No. Thank you. Item number 4, declarations of interests. Are there any other declarations which members would like to declare which haven't already been printed on the order paper? For me, under disclosable pecuniary interests, my interest should read that I'm an employee of the UK Parliament. Councillor Croft, do you have any further declarations? Thank you. Item number 5, Licensing Act 2003, variation to premises licence, Anchor Service Station, Weddington Road, Nuneaton, CV10 0AN, and this is a report from the Director for Democracy, Planning and Public Protection. So the first part of the procedure is to introduce everyone in the call. So my name is Councillor Evans. I'm chairing this subcommittee. The other members are Councillor Croft and Councillor Wilson, who hopefully will be joining us shortly. We have Carl Jacobs, who is head of the council's licensing department, and Julianne Lloyd, who is a senior licensing officer. We have Philip Richardson, who I presume is the council's legal representative in this meeting. We have Kelly Baxter, a committee clerk at the council. We have Mr. Chowdhury, who is the applicant present alongside his agent. Is it Jill Charat? Sorry, have I pronounced that correctly? Yeah, thank you. In terms of the interested parties, we have Councillor Keith Kandaka, who is a member of this council and represents the Weddington ward. And we also have Mrs. Michelle Kandaka, who is speaking as a local resident. I don't believe that any other interested parties who have submitted objections are taking part in the call.
No, they're not. They're not able to take part, Councillor Evans. But I am available to read out their representations at the appropriate time.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Julianne. Could I, it's my duty to remind parties of their right to address and present evidence to the subcommittee and, if permitted, to question other parties. It's also my duty to remind parties of their right to be represented at the hearing. Could I ask the council's legal representative to confirm that the notice of hearing has been given to prescribed parties and to advise of any notices received from a party regarding attendance and witnesses? Mr. Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, notices have been given, and clearly those representations that have been received are attached to the agenda.
Okay, I think I know the question. Sorry, I think I know the answer to the next question, but could you advise whether any notice of, sorry, if there's been any notice of representations which have been withdrawn? Is that a no?
No.
Thank you. Could I ask all parties present, do you wish to submit any further documentary evidence to this subcommittee? If you don't need to answer, but if you do, you just shout out. Councillor Cunlarky, your hand has been raised.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just in response to the applicant's statement about there being no issues, I did actually email a document in an extract from the Coventry Telegraph just about one of the incidents over the last couple decades. So I don't know if I emailed it to the right person. So is it best to email it to Kelly or to Julianne or?
Well, I certainly. Sorry, have you finished?
Yeah.
Yeah. I certainly haven't been made aware of that submission, Councillor Kundaka. However, if you'd like to, I don't know if it's on a link to an online article. If you'd like to put that link into the group chat for myself, Councillor Croft and Councillor Wilson to peruse, then we would be happy to look at that as supplementary evidence.
Can I make a legal point on that? Would you mind?
So could I just ask if you wish to speak, could you just raise your hand so I can on the bar so that it shows up on my list, just for future reference, if that's okay. Yes. Is there any further evidence that you wish to submit?
No, but I do want to make a legal submission based on what I've just heard. We've had no disclosure of this additional document, and Regulation 18 is quite clear on this point. In order to produce it at the time of the hearing, he needs consent in order to do so. It's too late for that document to go in. Regulation 18.
Of which act?
Of the Licensing Act 2003.
From the chair, I'm going to move that this subcommittee is adjourned for a period of 5 minutes for me to look at that relevant section of the Act. Could I,
Chair, can I assist you, because I've got it in front of me.
You can assist me privately, but I'd like to take legal advice privately, Mr. Richardson. So I'm adjourning this meeting. Is that seconded? Okay, so I've moved my procedural motion that the subcommittee is adjourned for a period of 5 minutes. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Could I ask members of the committee to join the other meeting that's been set up by Kelly and Mr. Richardson? If you could come into that meeting, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, would you?
for you.
Thank you.
We are now live streaming, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, Jill Sherratt, thank you very much for your input there. I've looked at the Act and it states as follows. Regulation 18, in considering any representations or notice made by a party, the authority may take into account documentary or other information.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, Chair, you've been you got about halfway through and then you muted.
Thank you. I'm going to start that again. So Regulation 18 states as follows. In considering any representations or notice made by a party, the authority may take into account documentary or other information produced by a party in support of their application, representations or notice as applicable, either before the hearing or with consent of all other parties at the hearing. In light of that regulation, should Councillor Kandaka wish to submit that additional evidence, it will need to be at the consent of both Mrs. Kandaka and the applicant. So, Mrs. Kandaka, do you give your consent for Councillor Kandaka to submit that additional evidence?
Yes, I believe it was actually submitted just before the hearing.
Jill Sherratt, do you give your consent for that additional evidence to be submitted?
I don't know, Chair. I have not had any sight of it at all.
Okay. Councillor Kandaka, when did you submit that evidence?
Chair, I just sent a link about an hour before the meeting, but I don't want this tied up in this. If they're not happy to see the evidence, I'm happy to just skip this item.
Okay.
You just asked if they wanted anything to submitted. You shouldn't have asked if I wasn't allowed to.
Well, the fact is that you can, but you would need to have consent of all parties. But given that the applicant's agent has refused consent, I cannot allow that evidence to be seen during the subcommittee. So I'm going to explain the procedure and go through how we're going to go through tonight. So firstly, I'm going to invite the applicant to outline his case, although I'm happy for Jill to speak on his behalf. The subcommittee will then be given the opportunity to ask any questions to the applicant or his agent. I'm then going to invite the interested parties present, so Councillor Kandaka, Mrs. Kandaka, you can come in and cross-examine the applicant or the agent should you wish. I'll then give the applicant the right to call in any further support in favour of the application. Should the applicant decide to should the applicant decide to call in any further witnesses, then the interested parties will also be given the chance to cross-examine those witnesses. I'll then invite the interested parties, Councillor Kandaka, Mrs. Kandaka, to make their submissions to the subcommittee, and the applicant does have the right to cross-examine you should he or she wish to. The subcommittee is also entitled to ask questions to you as well. I will then give any interested parties present the opportunity to close, to make a closing statement to the subcommittee, and then the applicant or the agent will be entitled to make a closing statement as well. At that point, the subcommittee will go away in private to deliberate and hopefully come to a decision. So in light of that, could I ask the applicant or your agent to outline your case to the subcommittee. So, Jill.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I will be making the application to you today on behalf of Mr. Chowdhury. You should have had some documentary evidence in support of the application before now. What I will do, I will just outline the application very briefly, and then I'll go into that. You obviously will have read it already. I'll skirt over it. I'll try to be as brief as possible. So we're here to make an application for a variation. The site that we are here to discuss is Anchor Road Service Station. It's had an alcohol licence for at least 10 years that I'm aware of, and I will come to the way that it runs in a second. So this application is essentially threefold. It's to vary the hours to bring the alcohol hours in line with the operation of the business. The business is 24 hours. And the alcohol sales are to reflect the opening hours of the business. Secondly, we've applied for late night refreshment. That is hot food and drink from 11 o'clock until 5 in the morning. And I will clarify exactly what that means in terms of this business. And then just because the variation had been submitted just as part of what we do for clients, we had a look at the licence in terms of conditions. It was quite clear that this licence could be improved somewhat. And with it being an application for 24 hours, we are also updating the conditions on the licence as well while we're at it. So it's a threefold application. I'm going to give you some background first of all to assist you in making your decision about Mr. Chowdhury. As you can see from the documentation that we've put in, is a man of considerable experience and knowledge in the area of convenience store retailing. He's been in the trade for over 25 years. And all of his business is based in Nuneaton. He employs no less than 150 people in the town. 18 of those are employed at Anchor Service Station. He has 3 shops, 2 of which he's owned for over 20 years, and Anchor Road Service Station he's owned for over 15 years. So you're not considering a new business or someone who doesn't know what he's doing. Quite the opposite. In fact, in this case, there's a track record that you can draw from. Now, in terms of the businesses, and I think it's important, particularly in the times that we're in at the moment, to just explain to you not so much about the sales and the profits of this business, but how it features in terms of the community, because it is a central community business and it serves the community in so many ways. At the present time, of course, helping the vulnerable, but we'll come to that in a second. Put COVID aside, in normal times, this business supports the community in many ways, in particular the local schools, seasonal activities. They get free advent calendars, free Easter eggs. They sponsor sports teams. They've just started an initiative where they are giving vouchers for children who don't get fed well, and to make sure they're getting their breakfast and things like that. And starting up breakfast clubs. Over the lockdown period, Mr. Chowdhury will be able to expand on this if you feel that it's something you want to know about. He estimates they've helped over 300 people, delivering to them without any charge. So if you're in any doubt about the calibre of the business and the community and the things that are happening in that regard, of course, Mr. Chowdhury will be able to answer any questions that you have if you feel it's appropriate. In terms of the licensing objectives, because I'm aware that the community, it's nothing to do with the licensing objectives, it's just background for you. But in terms of the licensing objectives, all of these stores have been selling alcohol for well over a decade. We've had to estimate, but we think that the 2 other shops have been selling for about 18 years alcohol. And it's significant to note that there's never been a complaint, a problem, any police intervention, anything negative at all. Mr. Chowdhury runs a very, very tight ship and has a flawless record of alcohol sales throughout the whole of his business. So in terms of the premises that is subject to this application, Anchor Service Station is a well-established filling station and forecourt. It has a convenience store under the Budgeons brand, which again is relevant because it's quite a high-end brand is Budgeons. And alcohol, it's a generalised convenience store. Alcohol is not the focus of the business. Alcohol's being sold already for 16 hours a day, and as I've already said, and it has been for many years without problems or complaint. 18 people employed, and significantly, Mr. Chowdhury is the manager of this particular shop. His office is there that is where he is based, and he spends most of his time at the premises. So the business is open 24 hours, and as I've said, the application is to streamline this sale of alcohol to match the sale of all the other goods, and that is entirely normal, entirely the way that things work with service stations. It's within the government guidance to the Licensing Act that stores should be able to sell alcohol for the amount of hours that they are open to the public, unless there is good evidence linked directly to the premises that they shouldn't be permitted to do so. And that is, we're applying for nothing that is unusual. We deal with a lot of the forecourt big businesses, corporate businesses across England and Wales, and they all operate 24 hours. The reason that is that 24 hours might sound excessive to some, but it's because forecourts are secure. The very nature of them, they're secure premises. Between the hours of 11 and 6, the shop is closed. We have offered a condition that all sales, and they are anyway, it's what is already happening at the premises, but all sales are going to be made through the night hatch. And as I've said, a condition will formalise that. The forecourts are brightly lit. They have comprehensive CCTV, not just covering the store itself, but across the forecourt. And they are not a place that people misbehave or cause trouble. Refusing sales is much easier due to the safety of the hatch and people, the customers being outside. And that is why most forecourts sell alcohol 24 hours. But going back to Mr. Chowdhury and his diligence, he constantly modernises and improves all of his businesses. And I thought you would be interested to know that the latest improvement at Anchor Service Station is the CCTV. He's upgraded it, not because of this application. It was due to be on his rolling programme of improvements. It's costing £23,000. He will tell you the status of that CCTV if you want to know any more. It's fully digital. You can watch it from wherever, it's remote, and just ask him any questions if you want to know about it. It tells you again the type of responsible business person that he is. In terms of the late night refreshment, because I know one of the ladies who made an objection made reference to people being inside. That's not what late night refreshment in this particular case is about. Unfortunately, the late night refreshment element of premises licences does capture some premises just for hot tea and coffee, and that is all that will be sold from this premises in terms of late night refreshment, but obviously it makes sense to put it on the licence. And as I've said, the conditions, there was very, very few conditions on this licence at all, which is highly unusual. So we are offering a significant number of conditions and really doing a belt and braces. So by granting this licence, essentially, you're going to be regulating this premises in a way that it's never been regulated before. You can see the conditions that have been put in place, CCTV, staff training, refusals. All of those matters are what are already done at the premises, but they will become binding in law, Challenge 25. And I just wanted to mention, because in the supporting documentation, you've seen the e-learning training package. Now, it's a new thing, is e-learning. Most training for sales of alcohol is still done on paper. But Mr. Chowdhury, again, in his process of improvement, is going to move to an e-learning training package, which takes any question about training off the agenda because it's completely remote and is actually held by a third party. So again, I won't go into that anymore. If you have any questions on that, then I'll be able to answer those for you. So that is the application. It's very standard. It's not something that doesn't exist. And I will, just in drawing to a close, it's a very robust application indeed. And I will just draw your attention to the fact that the police and the other authorities, in their professional opinion, have not objected and deemed this application to uphold the licensing objectives in the terms that it's been applied for. So I will finish there. Obviously, Mr. Chowdhury is available and I'm also available for any questions should you have them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your very in-depth. Mr. Chowdhury, do you have any further comments that you wish to make to the subcommittee?
Not at the moment, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. So do any members of the subcommittee have any questions that they wish to put to the applicant? If you can do so by raising your hand if you do have any questions. No. Okay. So I do have one question. and it's in relation to the submission that I had, licensing matters. I think it's just your written submission. Page 3 under background to application. So Mr. Children's stores have never been the subject of any complaint, authority intervention, and the police have never been called to deal with any issue. And I want to ask a question in relation to the last part of that sentence. At 12 o'clock this afternoon, I looked at the crime map for the Nuneaton East area, which the service station comes under. And there were 8 reported crimes at the service station. I think we're at around shoplifting. I may be wrong about that. Could I ask, therefore, why you've made the statement that you have, that the police have never been called to deal with any issue? I'm happy for the agent to respond.
Yeah, I mean, I will say firstly, yeah, I'm dealing with that information from you off the hoof again. You know, it's new information, but I will deal with it. In terms of any comments that I make, I only make them strictly in relation to the sale of alcohol. It's not in relation to anything else. So if there's been there's shoplifting at every shop, that isn't what I would have included in that. I'm talking about sale to children, sale to drunks, specifically linked to the sale of alcohol only.
Thank you for your response. Do any other members have any questions that they'd like to put? No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Kondaka, is there anything that you'd like to put to the applicant? You do get the opportunity to outline your case later on in the meeting, but you do have the right to cross-examine the applicant / agent if you wish.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to know a bit more about the issue of crime and people being attracted to it, because you said in your thing there wasn't any crime, but it would have been useful if you'd actually provided some evidence. You obviously won't allow me to provide evidence to rebut your evidence, but there wasn't an attached list of what the crimes were. And as the Chair says, there's always going to be a lot of running away without paying for petrol and shoplifting, but it would have been really useful to actually have had a positive bit of evidence. So is there any particular reason why you didn't do that?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what I've just said. In terms of crime and problems, we are dealing with an alcohol licence. We're only dealing with the issues related to that. So when we make a comment that there are no problems, I mean, I know Mr. Chardy will be able to tell you he's passed a number of test purchases in relation to sales to children. So, but we have had no problems in relation to the sale of alcohol. When you're talking drive-offs, shoplifting, that can happen anywhere at any premises at any time. I'm not dealing with that, and so there is only positive reports to tell. We don't have anything negative in terms of, like, exactly how I've said. I wouldn't have put that in there had it not been absolutely 100% correct. We've not had any problems in terms of alcohol sales, which is what we're dealing with.
Thank you, Jill. Mr. Chowdhury, you've indicated that you wish to come in. Do you want to respond to Councillor Kondaka's point?
Yes, please, Chair. If just coming on the point of the shoplifting, we were actually targeted by one particular shoplifter. Hopefully your statistics will show this. And basically we were asked by the police, and he was arrested, and then he was given a long custodial sentence. So hence we usually very good. But we were targeted by one particular shoplifter, and hence we were actually asked to report this, hence to gather the evidence because he was actually a prolific shoplifter in the whole of Nuneaton town centre, and he actually helped build a case to actually give him a long custodial sentence.
Thank you for providing that
No
clarity. That is useful. Thank you, Mr. Chowdhury. Councillor Kondaka, are there any further points that you wish to make?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's also occasionally antisocial behaviour around the petrol station on the police crime stats. Obviously, that might be on your forecourt, but it might also be on the pavement around and whatever. So I wanted to confirm whether your CCT was going to cover the area around, and if you can give me a bit of a background, if you're aware of the antisocial behaviour that does go on, so more or less in the area between your BP petrol station and the KFC across the road.
Jill?
Yeah. We're not aware of any antisocial behaviour at all connected to this premises. I think in terms of legalities, I'm sure Mr. Charter would be more than happy to assist in terms of CCTV and doing whatever he can, but obviously he'd have to be very careful. I don't think it can go out onto the street. The CCTV is there to make sure that his premises is monitored, but he would be more than happy to assist with that, I'm sure, if he could do.
Councillor Kandaka, are there any further points?
No, that's it for the moment. It was just that little issue.
Thank you. Mrs. Kandaka, are there any points that you wish to put to the applicant or the agent at this stage?
I don't think there's anything in particular that hasn't already been covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kandaka. My question now to the applicant or the agent, is there any additional evidence that you wish to submit at this stage in support of your application?
No, that's it, Chair. Thank you. I've made the application. I'm quite happy. Thank you.
Do you wish? Okay. Do you wish to bring forward any witnesses?
No. The only thing which you referred to earlier is that I get a chance to respond after the objections have been outlined, and that's enough.
Yes. Yes, that is part of our internal procedure. Just bear with me. Okay, we're now at the stage where I'm going to call Councillor Kandaka first, if that's okay, to outline your case to the subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm the Borough and County Council for Wellington Division, which basically starts at the disused railway line that is a couple of 100 yards down the road from the applicant's site. And obviously my residents go through this site on the way to and from the town centre, and people return past the petrol station and the KFC going into my ward, coming home from a night of entertainment, etc. It obviously is a very important petrol station. Yeah, we're not disputing how well it's run or not. The issue is it's unfortunately in that sort of hinterland between the town centre activities, which are well policed and loud and rowdy and go on well into the night, and the quieter residential area. And it's trying to protect the people in that residential area from the impact of people coming out of the town. Unfortunately, one of my residents got beaten up coming out of town a few years ago, coming out over the Leicester Road Bridge and out. And it is that sort of area where the policing stops, and yet the problems do not stop. In terms of the police, the Safe Neighbourhoods team, the things, they wind down. Yeah, the policing is very much confined to the town centre after 11. And there's a lot of areas where we do have problems with young people drinking, particularly on Sandon Park, which is about half a mile from the site. We've had vandalism at the rugby club, and most recently the cricket pavilion had their covers wrecked by young people jumping all over them. And so there is an actual problem of antisocial behaviour coming out of the town. Luckily, there's not too many places to buy alcohol. We've got the Anchor pub, which is obviously well run and things, and we've got the Lidl and the Audi, which obviously both shut down at 11 o'clock. So it's this particular extension from 11 to 12, which I think is a real problematic time in terms of trying to keep the area safe from people buying alcohol on the way out, or just gathering at the petrol station, trying to get alcohol and things, and being a nuisance after 11 o'clock. And I think 11 o'clock was a very sensible time to finish the licensing, because it did tie in with when the nearby supermarkets were no longer providing it. If people did need alcohol between 11 and 12, you still had the ASDA. And I'm particularly shocked by the comments in the applicant's document about people coming back from the George Eliot. There aren't the shifts finishing between 11 and 12 necessarily to produce a massive throughput of people wanting alcohol who on nursing duties and want a bottle of wine after they've been on A&E. I'm sure there'll be one or two, but it just seemed an awful lot of effort to give him 59 minutes more sales time through a hatch and potentially causing more problems. Like you, I always look at the neighbourhood crime stats. I'm really passionate at keeping Weddington a safe place, particularly for the younger people who go into these darker areas and drink in the evenings. And at weekends, if you do go across Sandon Park or the Coronation Walk, I know if you go to the Anchor Pub and then turn the other way, there's a large grass strip across, you'll find all the drink bottles under the trees. And we're working very hard to reduce that. And I just don't see any gain from actually extending for that hour. It only extends the period of nuisance. I think I'll leave it there. But I was really annoyed at not being able to present the evidence about newspaper reports with the applicant saying there's no trouble, because clearly the petrol station forecourt is an attractor of people. Yeah, it does sell all sorts of useful things for people who are coming out in the nighttime economy in that 11 till 12 window. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, thank you for your submission. Could I ask, are there any witnesses or evidence that you would, additional witnesses or evidence that you would like to call in favour of your case?
The only things I wanted to add was a cutting from the newspaper, but that's not been allowed. And you've already mentioned the police data, which also is disputed. So I will leave it there.
Yeah, unfortunately, you do have the right to present that during a subcommittee, but it needs to be at the consent of all parties. So I can't allow that, unfortunately. Do any members of the subcommittee have any questions that they'd like to put to Councillor Kandaka? No? Okay. The applicant...
I did raise my hand, sorry.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Condacott, you mentioned that there are instances of antisocial behaviour in Weddington, and I'm not disputing that there are, but have you got a direct evidential link to the service station?
No, but the different point is this would be the only place selling alcohol after 11, apart from the pub. So it's extending the hours by 1 hour. So
Okay,
it gives increased opportunity.
I'll just to make sure, any further members who want to come in? No. Okay. Does the applicant or your agent, Jill, do you wish to? You do have the right to cross-examine Councillor Kandaka. Do you have any points or questions that you'd like to put to him?
Yeah, I certainly don't intend to cross-examine at all. No, I would just, out of interest, would like to ask the councillor if he considered speaking to Mr. Chowdhury before he put his representation in. Mr. Chowdhury is, I think he does fall as one of your parishioners running a business and employing people in your area. And I just wondered if you'd considered speaking to him before you objected to his application.
Councillor Kandaka.
No, I'm not sure if he does live in my area. It's not from the address in the paperwork, but there wasn't any pre-application consultation, which might have been useful to tell people what was planned. I am pleased that he's going for the night screen idea. That is an improvement. So this process has at least tightened things up, but I am also incredibly busy.
Yeah, I appreciate that, as we all are. I mean, the consultation period is 28 days and you would have had the application sent to you, and those 28 days, that's exactly what they are. They're a consultation period. I just wondered if you'd ever considered speaking with him, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Kandaka, do you wish to respond to that final point?
I just wanted to say I wasn't happy for it to be selling alcohol after 11, so there's also not much use in consulting.
Thank you. Any further points from the applicant or the agent? No. Okay, thank you. We now come to Mrs. Kandaka. Would you like to outline your case to the subcommittee?
Thank you. I mean, obviously, most of my points I put in my written objection. I just don't feel that it's a suitable place that actually needs to be, serving nighttime refreshment, serving alcohol, through the night. I know the alcohol sales are for not to be drunk on the premises. But, the amount of litter, broken bottles and what have you that you see between that point and going out into St Nicholas Ward, into Weddington Ward, it is quite, marked. And I am concerned about antisocial behaviour. As has already been said, people will be, been drinking in town, and then it is a natural point for walking home for a large area, because obviously being on the corner, it fans out. And so, people will already probably have had, alcohol to drink. Now, if you can then buy some more alcohol, then you might. If I got to a place, I thought, I fancy to drink some more. But if you can't get it, you're not going to drink it. So there's the health sort of knock-on effect, as well as the antisocial behaviour side of things, and the litter. It is very, very marked. I happen to go to church on a Sunday morning, and you really notice it, sort of, cycling in, off and through the park and what have you, through the town on a Sunday morning after Saturday night. So I'm very concerned really about the antisocial behaviour, just the general safety, the litter problems, and the amenity for it is in a residential area, not so much going up towards Weddington, but Old Hinkley Road. There are houses literally next door. There are houses directly, opposite. So, it's those people, and I think some of them, presumably, I don't know the addresses of the people that did object, are people who've got it literally on their doorstep. It's nothing to do with how the service station is being run, and that the shop is providing a service and what have you. I have no problem with any of that. It is this late night aspect. And it was notable that the planning consent for converting the car wash to a sort of cafe place and things was refused by the planning committee, and that refusal was upheld by the independent planning inspector just only a matter of a month or two ago. Decision date for that appeal was 27th of August 2020. So someone completely outside has come and had a look and did not feel that it was the right place for that to be. And litter was one of the big things, and it doesn't matter how good the person running the shop is, they cannot control where people drop their bottles and such, and just litter around the place and things. We see that from KFC up on Horse and Grange. You see it from Subway and things. When these places providing takeaway refreshments or whatever and things, you get more litter. I mean, I've done litter picks in the areas, and it is noticeable because the litter and things is branded, so you know where it's come from. So I think that's probably all I need to say. And if people did, if people are driving and they do want 24-hour refreshment and what have you and things, that they just, probably not more than 2 miles, we've got 24-hour service at McDonald's at Dodwells. There's 24-hour service at McDonald's at Bermuda Park. So that if people are already in a car and things, there are places for them to already, get refreshment. And so I don't feel that there's a need for it to be overnight. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission, Mrs. Kundaka. Could I ask, are there any witnesses or further evidence that you wish to submit in support of your case?
No, I probably should just add, obviously, we only saw the report from the applicant. I think I was only emailed that yesterday, and I certainly only managed to actually read it when I got back this afternoon, things, which is why we, couldn't submit any further evidence. But I am a little concerned that it, just claim there's been no crime or whatever and things. Now, I'm not blaming Mr. Chowdhury, for any crime that happens at the service station, because I mean it's not him doing the crime things. But it's a fact of life, unfortunately, that that there will be antisocial things, and adding alcohol or the potential alcohol into the mix, I just feel is just one step too far.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Kundaka. Are there any members of the subcommittee that would like to put any questions to Mrs. Kundaka? Councillor Wilson, I see that you've indicated.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I think I should declare possibly an interest in that I sit on the planning committee, and I believe I may have dealt with that planning application, although I see many. I can't necessarily remember all of them, but I do believe that I voted against that one. But I would make the point, and I approached it in the same way, that planning considerations are completely separate to licensing applications, and that will have no bearing on my decision tonight. And I don't think that it is relevant to the licensing subcommittee tonight about that. But my question is Mrs. Condacor aware that there are other petrol stations within the borough who are in residential areas that do have 24-hour licenses to sell alcohol, and also that ASDA, even before COVID, was restricting the sale of alcohol after, I believe so I think that some of the arguments put forward aren't completely correct. Thank you, Chair.
Mrs. Kundaka, would you like to respond?
Well, I think that you're actually making more a case against this application than you are for, because if ASDA were stopping serving alcohol, through their night hours, then that's all the more reason not to have it there, because it means that everyone's then in thing. In terms of what other petrol stations and things, I have no idea. I'm not a night owl. I'm always tucked in my bed by then things, and I can only comment on things that I have seen between the town centre and the areas that we walk and cycle and live. So, and to Weddington, I mean, if I'm coming out from town, I've either got to go Old Hinkley Road or up Weddington Road and across. So I can only comment on those areas, and I'm aware of the antisocial behaviour in those areas, and I'm aware of the litter in those areas. I can't comment about other parts of town, although I know, there's certainly a lot of litter in other parts of town. Whether that's anything to do with what shops are selling, what I couldn't say.
Thank you, Mrs. Kundaka. Could I ask the agent or the applicant, do you wish to put any points or questions to Mrs. Kundaka? Mr. Chowdhury? Thank you. Julianne,
Yes.
I believe that there's been further objections from residents who have not been able to attend this evening. Are there any objections that you'd like to read out to the subcommittee?
The representations that we thought were valid are actually included in the report. So if you wanted me to read them out, I'm quite happy to, but it would just be as they are in the report.
Okay, if that's the case, that's okay. I wasn't entirely sure if any of those residents did submit any further statements that they wanted reading out, but
no,
if that's the case,
no,
then
they haven't.
I've studied those representations, and yes, I know what the content is within those. But I do think it's fair to give the applicant or the agent the right to respond to those written representations, should you wish.
In terms of the written representations, the people that aren't here, I think the only real comments that we had was the first one was about the late night refreshments, and I've covered that, and I think she was concerned that they were going to be able to go inside and they're not. And I think the second one is about, and I'll leave Mr. Chowdhury to deal with this, is the allegation that there's been damage caused. There's one lady said that there's been antisocial behaviour and damage to her property. And do you want to comment on that, Mr. Chowdhury?
Yeah, sure, Chair and members. Absolutely, in our 15 years, we have never, ever had anything related to one of our customers who have gone on to cause damage. Nothing that we have been highlighted by the police or any of our neighbours. We have a very good relationship with all our neighbours, the local community. Like I said, we've been there 15 years. We're well run, we're well invested. And I think we're a pivotal part of the Weddington area.
Thank you, Mr. Chowdhury. Councillor Kandaka, I was going to say Mrs. Councillor Kandaka then. Councillor Kandaka, you can make a closing statement to the committee should you wish. Do you wish to exercise your right to do that?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I understand it's difficult to turn down licensing applications. I don't know if you were minded to approve it, you could do so for a year's trial period, but I am very concerned and hope this is closely monitored, whatever the outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Kandaka. Mrs. Kandaka, you can make a closing statement to the subcommittee if you'd like to do so.
I don't think there's really much to add. I think I've covered everything that I wish to say. Thank you.
Okay. The applicant can now make a closing statement to the subcommittee. I'm happy for Jill to speak on the applicant's behalf. Jill.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, mainly you've heard the application. It's just in response to the points that you've heard there. I do want to respond to them, and I'm grateful for the committee bringing up the planning and the lack of relevance to this hearing. Lack of relevance, again, is the issue of need. This isn't about need and whether we don't see any gain and we think it should tie in. That is all irrelevant in terms of a licensing hearing. This application has to be taken on its merits. It doesn't matter what Asda does down the road either. The concerns that you've heard are speculation and they're generalised concerns about the area. And you've heard it's nothing to do with how this service station is being run. Well, it's absolutely everything to do with how this service station is being run. An application for a licence, for an extension or a new licence, is specific, and it's about the only assessment that is as you will know, you are here to make is, are the licensing objectives going to be upheld at this premises, and that is it. It isn't about control of people away from this premises. I don't think anyone would suggest that that is Mr. Chowdhury's job. They are, you've heard a lot about litter. They are responsible. The individuals who throw that litter, they are responsible to the law in their own right. Mr. Chowdhury's job is to uphold the licensing objectives at his premises. He already does that 16 hours a day and has done it for over a decade. So there can't be any suggestion in my submission that he suddenly will stop being able to do that at 11 o'clock. Quite the contrary, when the busiest times of the week are Friday and Saturday night at 8 and 9 and 10 o'clock, they're the busiest times of the week. It is a lot quieter overnight. So the evidence is there that there will be no change in terms of the quality of the operation here. And you've heard from the councillor that they acknowledge he's a good operator. And, these applications, these businesses in areas, there are a lot worse areas than this that have places selling alcohol. And a good operator is, in fact, another good set of eyes and ears in an area where there are issues. If there are issues, they are a positive. They're not a negative, and they really shouldn't be seen as a negative. And it is wrong to be saying it's okay for us to have it. It's okay for the big corporates to have it. We're fine with that because we know what they're like. But it's not okay. We're going to stop this local business because we think they might not be able to uphold the licensing objectives. I do take issue with that. Mr. Chowdhury, and I will come to COVID because the government has taken every possible step that it can to support businesses with this pandemic. They've changed the law. They've brought in the Business and Planning Act. They've tried to do everything they can. There's a letter being sent out asking committees to support businesses, and that is what should be at the forefront of every councillor's mind in these times when people's jobs are at risk. And if you've got businesses that are flourishing, then they should be encouraged to flourish and not try to be restricted. Just let me have a look because my notes are all over the place. In terms, I'll just really make the point again that when I say there's been no problems, I am, again, very specific related to this premises in terms of alcohol sales, and that is the evidence that I'm asking you to draw on. You have, and the councillor, I think, did refer to it, they have the power of review. That is why licensing applications tend to be granted, because the default position is grant because of the very, very strong and significant power of review should something go wrong. Decisions have to be based on evidence and not speculation. And I will leave you with the point I made at the end of my last submission, which is the police. They are the people with the statistics in their hands about antisocial behaviour. And I guarantee you, as an ex-police officer myself, guarantee you that if the police had a problem in this area and with this application, they'd be here now telling you all about it with those statistics, and they're not here. And you need to see those as the experts in that regard. So it's a robust application, but not only robust, if we hadn't offered the change of conditions, we are actually offering to change all the conditions on this licence while we're at it, which gives regulation to this licence, like I said before, that it didn't have previously. So it's a robust application, committee, and I would ask you to grant it. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission. Mr. Chowdhury, are there any further comments that you wish to make?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask the council's legal representative, just before we go into deliberation, are you satisfied that the correct procedure has been carried out?
Yes, Chair. I think everyone has had an equal opportunity to make their representations and to ask questions. So I think it's satisfied both the hearings regulations and our internal guidelines. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. In which case, I'm going to order that the subcommittee now adjourns to deliberate on this application. Sometimes, well, the majority of the times we do come to a decision at the meeting, but sometimes we might not, and we may have to potentially defer the application if necessary. But could I ask all members to go into the other meeting that was set up by Kelly to deliberate, and could I ask Mr. Richardson to join us in that meeting? Kelly, could I ask that the live stream is continued until we come back, because I am conscious that there are people watching this on YouTube at the moment, so I do want them to hear the decision of the subcommittee should we come to one. Is that okay?
Okay. Yes, Chair. I'll just ask him, the live streamer, to put an adjournment on, and then when you come back, if you ask it to be removed, then I can ask him to do that. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kelly. So if we can go to over to the other
It's now live, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Richardson is present. Right. Okay. First of all, can I just thank all of those who have attended this subcommittee this evening, and I'd like to thank the residents who have submitted their objections for taking the time to do so. The committee has come to a unanimous decision this evening, and our decision is to approve the variation to premises licence as submitted by Mr. Chowdhury. We paid specific attention to the section 182 guidance, and I quote, "Shops, stores and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any time when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting those hours." So our decision is to approve the licence. However, I would like to make the point in reference to the objections that it is the right of a local resident to request a review of a licence should they feel that the licensee holder is in breach of the licensing objectives. So I trust that Mr. Chowdhury will take into account the concerns of of local residents who have objected to this application. But just to confirm, we have decided to approve the application as printed in the name of Mr. Chowdhury. You will receive that. Okay. You will receive that formally in writing from the licensing department. So in which case, I declare the meeting formally closed at 10 minutes past 7. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Chair.